Hello, everybody. My name is Bren Lopez, and I'm the manager of Children's Book World in Los Angeles, where we celebrate diversity, knowledge, and enrichment. It is a world where every child sees themselves on our bookshelves, and I am so very excited to be here with one of our favorite picture book authors, Helena Ku Rhee, whose fourth book, Sora's Seashells, was just released. This story talk is going to be sponsored by our friends at Teach API. They help kids and communities navigate and celebrate their Asian American Pacific Islander heritage in schools and beyond. And this is AAPI Heritage Month, so it's a special celebration. Helena, I love all of your books. We love your books here at Children's Book World. We have Rosa Song, that was your last book, which did you get a lot of great feedback from people about this book?
I did. I had people reaching out saying, I lived in an apartment building similar to yours. So yes.
Yeah, this is a wonderful book about immigration and about kids who are shy of becoming friends, and it's
about
just really
friendship. It has a pet parrot in it.
And then we had The Paper Kingdom, which was before that, and this was a really, really special book as well. Tell us about how people responded to this book.
Yeah, so that's probably my most personal book about how when I was very little, my parents worked as night janitors, and because they couldn't afford a babysitter, I had to go to work with them. And instead of a miserable time, I had an amazing time thanks to the power of imagination. And that is probably the book that I get the most feedback from. And I get reader emails and social media messages all the time saying that the book really touched them or that they had a similar experience growing up. So that's really, really gratifying.
And your very first book, The Turtle Ship, it's got a little bit of a glare going on there, but we can see it. Tell us about that book.
Yeah, so that's loosely based on Korean history. There was a real thing called the turtle ship, shaped like a turtle, many, many hundreds of years ago in Korea. And nobody knows the origin of the design of the turtle ship. So I fictionalized the story and thought, well, what if there was a young boy who had a pet turtle and he enters a national competition to design a battleship, and he's inspired by the shape of his pet turtle, which is strong and mighty and it never sinks.
Yeah, it's a very special book. But this fourth book, the new book, Sora's Seashells, is a beautiful book about a relationship of a young girl and her grandmother. I'm going to let you talk about the book. I'm going to go off and you can share the story, and then I'll come back on and we can talk a little bit more.
Thank you so much, Bren. Thank you to Teach AAPI, and also thank you to Children's Book World. I am going to share my screen so that I can show you the book. So just bear with me for 1 second. Okay, so Sora's Seashells. This is the cover, and I absolutely love it. The image was done in watercolors, and if you've ever worked with watercolors, all you need is a little tiny speck of paint. You add water to it, and you can create scenes like this, scenes of the seashore. And so the artists, you see their names at the bottom, Stella Lim and Ji-Hyuk Kim. They're both located in South Korea. They use watercolors to create these images because watercolors are perfect for painting the seaside. Sora's grandmother Halmoni visited from far away every summer. The day after she arrived, they took the bus to the beach where they combed the shore for seashells together. And just so you know, the word Halmoni is a Korean word that means grandmother. So that's what Sora called her grandmother, Halmoni. It's also what I used to call my two grandmothers, Halmoni. They found shells with pale pink lines, others with smooth white ridges. Some were as big as Sora's hand, other as tiny as a dime. And I'm sure many of you have tried looking for seashells by the ocean, especially if you live in the Los Angeles area or somewhere near a beach. And that was one of my favorite activities growing up. Halmoni chose the prettiest shell and tucked it into her pocket. Look at that beautiful ocean. Again, watercolors. You just need a little bit of paint and it creates this luminous, gorgeous image. And I just love the warmth that you see between Sora and her grandmother here as they're sharing this favorite activity of theirs. That's pretty much my experience growing up too. On their walk to the bus stop, Harmony placed the shell on a beach. Why did you leave the shell there? Sora asked. Can't we take it with us? It's a gift, Harmony said, for anyone who sees its beauty. Sora glanced back at the shell. She wanted to take it home, but she followed Harmony onto the bus. And I'm sure many of you have this impulse too, as I do. When you see something beautiful, you want to take it home. You want to keep it. And so Sora's a little confused as to why Harmony just leaves that beautiful shell behind. And Harmony says it's a gift for someone else. When they went back to the beach the next day, the shell was gone. Harmony, Sora said, someone took our shell. It wasn't ours. It was a gift, Harmony said. Sora did not agree, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she decided to hide some seashells in her pocket when Harmony wasn't watching. So now Sora has a little secret that Harmony doesn't know about right now. And I love the way Sora is drawn here when she's standing by the bench. So adorable. I just love these images. And just so you know, when creating picture books, the author and illustrator give their own input. What that means is that I write the story, and then the story goes to the illustrator, the artist, so that they can do their work without my input. So there were a few times when I was asked, well, what do you think about this character? Does this character look like the way you imagined? Or what do you think about Harmony? I remember there were many, many different sketches of the way Harmony should look. And so at that point, I gave a little bit of feedback, but for the most part, the artist created Sora's world using their own imagination without my opinion or input. By the time Harmony left, Sora had a jar full of shells. I love this page because when I was Sora's age, my parents and I lived in Koreatown, Los Angeles in a one-bedroom apartment. So I did not have my own room. I dreamed of having a room like this with a play tent and paintings on the wall and books and toys and a big wooden crate. I would have loved to have a room like this. But instead, because I didn't have my own space, sometimes if I wanted some peace and quiet or I wanted to read a book, I would go into a somewhat empty closet that we had. It had a light, so I'd turn on the light, I'd take some water in there with me, and I would read or I would play with my toys inside the closet. A few weeks later, Sora began kindergarten. Most of the kids were nice, but a few were not. One said, "Your name is weird." Another said, "Are you sure your name isn't Sarah?" Sora tried to ignore them, but sometimes it made her stomach hurt. And this classroom image I find to be so interesting. Look at the different kids, look at their expressions, and I love the way the illustrators drew this page, the spread, I should say. A spread is 2 pages. So I actually did not give any opinions about this page, and it was the illustrators who decided how to create each of the students. And I think they did a really wonderful job of capturing the diversity that exists in a lot of LA classrooms. My classroom looked pretty similar to this, so it's really neat for me to see. She didn't say anything to her parents, but every week the same kids teased her. And when you look at Sora's room now, you can see that there's a lot of blue colors, blue tones, shadows. And that's because the room now reflects her sad mood. And I love that. I love that the images can reflect a character's mood. And that's why a lot of times with picture books, the images are doing so much of the storytelling, not just the words, but the images. One day, a call came with sad news about Harmony. Oh, the characters are so sad here. Sora's mom is crying, and Sora's sitting on the stairs, looking at her parents. And I love this scene as well because they are sad. The characters are really sad, but the room is bright and light. And if you look towards the back of that dining area, you see some family images on the wall. So it's almost like even though Harmony's gone, she's still with them. There's still warm memories of her all around the room. Sora realized Harmony was never coming back. She thought of all the summers ahead without her. She remembered how Harmony would say her name with a soft S and a gently rolled R. When I say the word Sora in English, it sounds like Sora. But when you say it in Korean, it sounds like this, Tora, Tora, with a soft S and a gently rolled R. Then she felt sad about everything, including the mean kids at school. All the bottled up tears began flowing. I want to see Harmony, Sora cried, and I hate my name. I want to be Sarah. Sora's parents looked at her and at each other. Then the three of them went to the beach. Wow, what a glorious scene. Look at that sunset, look at the waves, and this is a very strong memory for me. My parents and I used to go to the beach almost every weekend while I grew up in Koreatown because you actually don't need very much money to go have a good time at the beach. You can buy yourself some cotton candy or a hot dog, and you can look for seashells and build a sandcastle. And so we used to go to the beach a lot. And even now, when I'm having a bad day or a stressful day, I take a drive to the beach at Santa Monica, or I take a walk along Palisades Park to feel better. And I usually feel a lot better after breathing in the ocean scent and looking at the waves. It always makes me feel so much better. They walked down to the waves. After a little while, Sora's mother picked up the most beautiful shell. It had pale pink stripes and smooth ridges, just like Harmony's favorites. Sora means seashell in Korean, her mother said. Harmony always said, finding a perfect shell is like receiving a wonderful gift. That's why, she suggested, we name you Sora. Sora's father held her close. You're our greatest gift, Sora. And just so you know, I'm showing some of the images from the book, but not all of them. So my hope is that you'll pick up a copy of the book at your local bookstore, like at Children's Book World, so that you can study all the images at home. Okay, so I am going to show my book now and stop sharing the screen because as I mentioned to you, these are some images that I think would be really cool for you to look at very closely if you pick up a copy of the book. The next week, Sora brought her jar of seashells to school for show and tell. When she got up to speak, a few kids started giggling. Sora took a deep breath. In a loud, strong voice, she said, in Korean, Sora means seashell. My grandmother, Harmony, told my parents that I was a gift, just like a perfect shell, so they named me Sora. I love the kids' expressions on this spread and the teacher's expressions. Sora gave her teacher a shell. She gave each of her friends a shell. Then Sora looked at the kids who teased her. Oh, I love the way they look so insecure here. What will Sora do next? The mystery. Sora gave each of them a beautiful shell. One looked at the shell and said, your name makes sense now. Another said, yeah, Sora sounds like a superhero name. Sora was so surprised she could hardly speak. Thanks, she whispered. Sora walked back to her seat. Her jar was almost empty, but she felt like she could fly with the seagulls. What a gorgeous page. I love it. I actually received an email recently from a reader saying that she absolutely loves this scene with the seagulls. And I do too. That evening, Sora asked her parents to drive her to the beach again. She placed the last shell from her jar on the bench as a gift for anyone who could see its beauty. Sora is carrying on Harmony's tradition, exactly what Harmony used to do. And that brings us to the end of the book. And I wanted to write a story about how a young girl gains the courage to stand up to bullies in a rather surprising way with kindness rather than a sense of revenge. So I'm going to share a little bit about myself. So I'm going to share my screen again really quick.
Oh, let me go.
Okay, so So a lot of people ask me, how did you come up with the story? Well, one of the things I was thinking about was my own name. My name was not always Helena. When I started kindergarten, my name was actually my Korean name, Haeyun, which is spelled like the way it's on screen. And a lot of teachers had a hard time pronouncing my name, and some kids actually made fun of my name. Sometimes I would walk across the schoolyard and suddenly I'd hear someone yell out, "Hey, you!" And it doesn't sound that bad, but when you're, around 6 years old and you're wearing your favorite outfit and you think you're having a good day and someone yells, "Hey, you!" and kids start laughing, it doesn't feel very good. And so I asked my parents to change my name. And that's how I came to have the name Helena. But one day my dad told me, well, we don't think we've ever explained to you what Haeyun means. In Korean, those two words mean intelligence and grace. And the reason we named you that is because, well, one of my favorite animals is the tiger. This was my dad speaking to me because a tiger has intelligence and grace. And after that, I realized, okay, my name is actually really cool. So now I use it as my middle name. And if you'd like to keep in touch, here's my website. Pollito the parrot is a character from one of my books, Rosa's Song. And there's my dog, Sherwin, as a little puppy. And you can find out more about my books and about Sherwin, actually, if you visit my website. I will stop sharing so that I can chat with Bren.
I have, we have that shared experience of names also. I mean, I had a name I was born with that I liked it, it was
Mm-hmm.
frequently when you're a boy, you inherit your father's names.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just a family thing. But when I was a kid, I decided I wanted my own name. So I sort of made my own name
Oh,
uh,
interesting.
and I've lived with it forever. But
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a power in that also, in being able to choose your name.
There's some agency there, instead of it being given to you, you select it. Yeah, there's definitely some agency that most people don't get to have. Most people are basically born with their names and live
Yeah.
with it, even if they don't like it.
And we're lucky because now we have two names that
Yeah.
and that's how I feel about it. I have two names and they're both wonderful. And
Mm-hmm.
so I understand that. The combination of the words with the artwork, and you talked a little bit about how you don't actually get to communicate that much with the illustrators, but they did such a beautiful job. One of the things I noticed was when the boys were bullying Sora
Mm-hmm.
initially, that
Mm-hmm.
the other students perked up very quickly because
Mm-hmm.
nobody is ever inactive when somebody is being bullied if they're
Oh, I
actually a
know.
witness to it. And I wanted you to talk about that.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. Sometimes we witness things that are uncomfortable for other people, and it's a question of how will you react? Will you step in or will you be a bystander? It's your personal choice. And I remember as a kid, it would vary from other students to, depending on what their level of comfort and shyness was. For instance, I remember there were times when people would make fun of this other little girl that was in my classroom, and one day I just got so sick of it. And I've been accused of sometimes having a bad temper. At least my family tells me this. And I just got so sick of it. I just had to say something. And I did. And what happened was that bullying transferred onto me because suddenly I was the focal point. And so after that, I got more timid about standing up for other people at school, unfortunately, because that experience taught me as soon as you're the attention focus of these bullies, they may turn on you, which is unfortunate because. And I don't blame the teachers at all. Some people have asked me, well, how come the teachers didn't step in during the bullying sessions? And the teachers can't do everything. They have 30 kids in the classroom. And when you're on the recess court, there are hundreds of kids out there with only a few teachers monitoring. They don't have eyes everywhere on their bodies. They can't see everything. And so a lot of these episodes of bullying take place when it's just kids. And so it's really hard as a child to navigate that sort of thing. And I really feel a lot of empathy and sympathy for people who have experienced this in their lives because I've been there.
Yeah. And then seeing the boys' reaction when Sora chose to be able to gift them with something, because initially they were frightened that they would not be included, that their actions had
Exactly.
repercussions.
Uh-huh.
And then her
I
action had a repercussion as well.
exactly. I love that moment because it's that moment when you think, well, is Sora going to get her piece now? Is she going to get back at them? But she chooses, I think, a rather surprising route, which is to give something generous of herself. And, it's not to say that this sort of show of kindness will work on everyone. The world is full of different types of people. But what we can each do is try to increase the level of kindness in our own little worlds, because hopefully it'll have a snowball effect and more people will just know how to be kind to each other.
Yeah. The about the ocean also, I was watching you read it again, made me think about something else, which was when Harmony and Sora are on the beach, that ocean connects to the other side of the ocean where Harmony is from or
That's
could be
true.
from. And I always felt like that as a little kid whenever we were at the beach. I always wondered what was on the other side of the water, what place was I connecting to. And of course, growing up in California, you feel like you're connected to Japan or South Korea or Russia or Australia, depending on where you're at, that across that way is another place. But in this particular instance, that connection of the ocean is also what binds Sora with her grandmother.
You're absolutely right. And you're actually making me think of my childhood when I wondered the same thing. I would look out at the horizon line at the beach and wonder, what's beyond that horizon line? And what's interesting is when I immigrated to the US, um, Honolulu, I was about 1.5 years old. Honolulu is the first place where we stepped foot as new Americans. And so
Mhm.
it's like the midpoint before coming over to the mainland US. But yeah, it's really fascinating to think about how there's all this interconnectedness. Seems so far, and yet it's really not.
So, what are the questions that kids ask you the most when you go to visit them in schools?
Yeah, so I've had a number of school visits during the past few weeks, and probably the number one question that I've been receiving, I maybe it's because my fourth book is the Sora Seashells, but a lot of kids have been asking me, "What's the most favorite book you've written so far?" They want to know that as if um, it's hard to choose. You know what I mean? I love them all for different reasons, and maybe because all my attention is on this right now because it's the newest one. Um, you know, I could say this is my favorite one for now, but it could change. And that's a question that I've been receiving a lot. And also, I've been receiving a lot of where do you get your ideas? That sort of question. I can tell that a lot of kids are inspired by author visits because they see that it's a possibility for them in the future to become authors or illustrators. And it absolutely is a possibility.
And to finish up, I wanted to say, we're talking about that process of writing. Can you talk to kids? Because a lot of kids might give up because they don't feel like that they get frustrated because it's not
Mhm.
turning out perfect the first time. As a
Yeah.
writer, professional writer, what would you have to say about that?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you brought it up. It's so easy to get discouraged when you see a piece of paper and either it's blank or you try to write something and it's a mess. And believe me, I've been there. Each of the stories I've written, they've always started off as messy, disorganized ideas. And through revision, writing it over and over, making it better and better through each revision, that's how you make something that could possibly become a book. So if you look at your story and you think, oh, this is not very good, don't get discouraged. Just keep working at it. And sometimes when I get so frustrated that I don't want to even look at a project I'm working on, what I do is I go for a walk. I walk with my dog Sherwin in our neighborhood, and that always gives me some clarity. It gives me a clear mind to go back and work on a project again. So don't expect to be perfect from the very first moment you try to do something, because all these books that people have written, some of the favorite books that you read over and over again, and you think, oh, this book is so great. If only I could write something like this. Just know that the creator went through so many rounds of revisions to get to that final book that you're reading.
And maybe with you, if you're a really good writer and you have a friend who's a really good drawer or artist, maybe you can write the story and your friend can do pictures to
Yeah,
go along with your story, and you
that's a
can
fun
work
project.
together. And that's a fun way to be able to do it. Helena, thank you so much for being with us today. I really do appreciate it. And we look forward to sharing more books with you.
Thank you so much, Brent. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate all my readers. And take care and happy reading.
We'll see you again soon.